Hi, I'm David Holm. Just like to take an opportunity to welcome you to Family Talks. Family Talks is a weekly Wednesday ministry of West Virginia Baptist Convention. It's a time where we take some time to talk to ministry folks throughout our West Virginia Baptist Convention family, not just to find out what's going on, but to find out how we as a family of churches can partner together to do ministry. My guest today is Lou Ortenzio. Lou is the director of the Clarksburg Mission. Lou is also a senior ministry leader at Clarksburg Baptist Church Celebrate Recovery, and Lou's involved in Celebrate Recovery throughout West Virginia and actually throughout the country. So welcome, Lou. We're glad to have you with us today.
Great to be here today, David.
Thank you. With Celebrate Recovery and with other recovery ministries, meetings are an important component of that ministry. And so with COVID-19, those meetings have not been taking place. And I'm just curious if you could fill us in a little bit on how the lack of meetings might have affected recovery ministry, specifically with you or throughout our state, or anything that you want to share with us.
Well, interesting questions and certainly very complicated answers. We've heard a lot about Dr. Clay Marsh of late. He's been the COVID czar in West Virginia. And before he was the COVID czar, and I'm sure he still is, vice president of health sciences at West Virginia University and the dean of the School of Medicine. And I connected with him several years ago, and we were talking about the health of West Virginians and determined that the health of West Virginians was less than stellar, that we were 50th in the good stuff and first in the bad stuff. We know we have high rates of ill health, of psychiatric disease, of addiction, of diabetes, of obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, all those things. And that we have high rates of overdose and drug addiction and very poor rates of health. And as Clay Marsh came in as the dean of the School of Medicine, vice president of health sciences, and he was going to, with a view of a zealot, try to solve those problems with W Medicine, our flagship university, our flagship medical school, our flagship hospital, Reuben Memorial, and try to tackle those problems. What he discovered and he shared with me is the things that make us healthy as a people are not strictly health issues, but something that medicine doesn't deal with very well. Traditional medicine is very good at rescue. If you have a heart attack, there's bypasses and stents and amazing cardiac procedures now. If you get cancer, there's all kinds of treatment. If you run your car off the road and you have trauma, there's amazing helicopters to life flight you to a university setting to have trauma care and be put back together again. And that's really well and good, but that doesn't really change our health statistics and make us healthier as a people and as a state. What really made the difference, Clay found, was connection, purpose, and hope. He'd found that West Virginians had become disconnected as a people. There's always been a trouble with purpose in West Virginia because of so much job instability. We were farmers and then coal miners and timber harvesters and railroaders and then industry, oil and gas, and it's been boom and bust and boom and bust and boom and bust. So a purpose for people to get up out of bed in the morning and get on with their life is not always clear. And it's easy when things are going down to become hopeless. So Clay found that traditional medicine couldn't address connection, purpose, and hope, but other things could. Certainly the church is prime in presenting connection, purpose, and hope. And Celebrate Recovery, particularly good. And I'm just so blessed that he did come to our Celebrate Recovery at Clarksburg Baptist and saw how we got so much connection going, and we were able to establish some purpose in people's lives by the grace of God and give them hope in Jesus Christ. The church and recovery ministries that's based on Christ makes a huge difference. And so does secular recoveries, AA and NA, that is often housed in a church. But the COVID crisis has really been a perfect storm of loss of connection as we've had to distance, as we've lost purposefulness. And it's very easy in all this fear that goes on with COVID, rightfully so, to be afraid of it, to lose hope in that process. And as we've had to curtail our church worship gatherings, and we've had to curtail Celebrate Recovery, or at least go to Zoom, meetings, that really is a problem. And we found, I'll share just in Harrison County, while we suffered one COVID death, an 83-year-old man, tragic for his family, tragic for him. But at the same time, in just my personal circle in Harrison County, we've had 4 overdose deaths, and their average age was 30. At the same time, one COVID death, because of all that disconnection, because of the dismantling of all recovery processes that are often based on meetings and getting together with people who are in recovery in all kinds of fashions, all that's had to be aborted. And so folks have become, and all the anxiety, the tremendous anxiety that people have suffered has been a huge problem. And it's led to purposelessness, it's led to hopelessness, and all this disconnection. So it's been tragic. And we need to take an opportunity now as we're reopening, as we're making a comeback, to really be forceful and determined and intentional about getting these ministries going again. I'm proud that Celebrate Recoveries are opening back up again. Churches are opening up again to have AA and NA. And while a Zoom meeting is a great thing, it really doesn't replace the face-to-face contact that we need. But I'm distressed because I think that more churches need to outreach, and it goes with that question that they do. And I'll share that last Saturday night I got to attend a memorial picnic in the yard of a house where this young man had died. His family got together on a Saturday evening and had pizza and got together to talk about his life and have some kind of memorial service of sorts. And as I noticed, the house that we were in was only a door away from a church and a block away from another church. And I just felt that was tragic. I didn't have any idea what contact that church had ever made with him and with the other folks who are struggling right now. We've seen a lot of relapses of folks who were in solid recovery because the whole recovery process has been impaired by our disconnection. I'm just hopeful that we are able, as a body of Christ and as a community, to reinstitute the recovery processes that we know are effective and carry them out so that folks can get on and we not suffer the terrible overdose deaths that we've suffered and the high rates of addiction to substances, drug substances and alcohol that I'm afraid is the hallmark of West Virginia. So it's really put us on our heads, and we've got a lot of work to do. I just would encourage all churches to think about how they can reach out to their neighborhood, because we've got the light of Christ and we've got the hope that only comes to Jesus Christ to offer. And somehow we have to do that. I don't know that I have a lot of answers. I do believe that Celebrate Recovery is effective and works, but there's certainly other ways to do that, to reach out to our neighbors and not just gather in our stained glass boxes and do our things. And, part of my Celebrate Recovery testimony is before I was a Christian, I viewed the church as a country club, a showroom, or a warehouse. And truly, I've come to understand that Jesus is a great physician. The church is a hospital for the sick. And then recovery meetings like Celebrate Recovery and other recovery meetings offered in a church setting can be the emergency room. CR is the ER. Celebrate Recovery is the emergency room, a great way to offer hope to people who don't know Jesus Christ and don't know which way to go in their life. So I'm really hopeful that this is a cry to us to step up and make the difference we need to make. It's caused us as a homeless shelter to really consider the ministry that we do, to really intensify what we do, to offer more recovery services here. We've been locked down for the most part. Just recently, we've been able to liberalize a lot of that. But while we were locked down, we really did intensify our Bible studies, recovery meetings that we could have in-house, and recovery programming, small groups, and one-on-one coaching that we do. So I feel like in part I've been sheltered from some of the horror out there, but as we emerge, we see there's a lot of loss out there. I'm involved in the drug courts here, both on the federal and the state level, and that's a really intensive effort to throw a lot of resources at a person who is in the criminal justice system and offer them hope from substance use disorder, to try to equip them. We took a disease of addiction. Sometimes it becomes a crime. and then we create a whole criminal justice industry when there it really can be offered treatment that's very effective. But it's been hard to have even drug court because we could not gather to the same level. And the day report centers and other treatment centers that are offering help for a while had to cease services because of the risk of viral infection in the pandemic.
Well, I think it's wonderful, and I've seen CR at work when I was a pastor, and I was very fortunate that the Celebrate Recovery that was at Clarksburg Baptist Church where I was pastor, you were the one who brought it there, and I've seen firsthand its effectiveness. And I also know that throughout the state, we've had a lot of Celebrate Recovery chapters, pop up here and there in different places. I know it was exciting. I know one of your goals one time was, if you lived in Clarksburg, for instance, you wanted there to be a CR available every night for someone to go to. And so that was the dream. I think that you realized, did you, or close?
At one point, we had 5 nights a week. We're at 4 at this point. So.
Okay. But I can only imagine. If it's important for someone to go to something every night, and they're really going through that, and all of a sudden, just literally overnight, it drops to 0, and I can only imagine the effect, the negative effect that would have. But obviously, if a church wanted to be involved, there's certainly plenty of Celebrate Recovery ministries available throughout our state, and certainly you can go to the website, I believe,
yes,
Celebrate Recovery's website, and find out where that is. And certainly you can encourage, if you can't start one, every church can't start a Celebrate Recovery, but you can certainly work with other churches and help people find those Celebrate Recoveries. But I don't want people to think that even if there's not a Celebrate Recovery near them, or they cannot start one themselves, I don't want them to think that there's nothing they can do.
Right.
And so I thought maybe if you had some great words of people who say, well, I don't have those resources. What can my little church do in my community?
Well, and we've really gotten focused on Celebrate Recovery for addiction, but it's for any kind of struggle. In fact, we say in Celebrate Recovery, our struggles are hurts, habits, and hang-ups, because we've all been hurt in life, and you cannot heal a hurt by saying it's not there. We all have habits that are not God's plan, not just chemical addiction, but all kinds of habits. And life on life's terms is tough. It's easy to get hung up. So Celebrate Recovery really is for any kind of hurt, habit, or hang-up, which is kind of a code word for sin, anything that wanders away from God's path. Right. So if a pastor or a church can make it cool to be in recovery, to make it okay to admit that you're not okay. But I think we have a misconception, just like I said, the church being a showroom, warehouse, or museum, the church is also supposed to be a gathering of all saints, but it's really a gathering of sinners who can be saved by grace, who need God's grace. And so if we can refute the misconception that you've got to be cleaned up before you go to church, that it's a place to come to. And so if the pastor can say it's okay to be in recovery from whatever struggle that is. And relative to the addiction process, every addict has 7 or 8 people surrounding them in a swarm of codependency or terrible anger, all kinds of and frustration and resentment. So there's all kinds of problems surrounding that problem alone. But anger, grief, depression, any kind of life struggle, aging, and the consequences of that are hurts and hang-ups that all can be talked about. And Jesus is a solution for all of that. So we need to offer him in all those ways. And you don't have to have a Celebrate Recovery in every church. You need to support folks who are seeking help. So.
Exactly. And I appreciate what you said about the church needs to be open to folks coming there. I remember when Celebrate Recovery came to Clarksburg, and I remember I would get up sometimes and give a greeting. And I remember you told me one time, you said you'll have a lot more credibility with folks if you introduce yourself the way that people in Celebrate Recovery introduce themselves. And so you want to tell us about that?
So we say that we're grateful believers in Jesus Christ, and then we mention our struggle. If you go to some of the other recovery groups, you say, I'm Lou, I'm an addict. But I say, I'm Lou, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle really with selfishness that drove the whole train of addiction. And I remember your greeting and others that can get up and say, I've just made a whole lot of bad decisions in my life at times, and it's all been covered by the grace of God.
Exactly.
So, we want to claim our identity as grateful believers in Jesus Christ, who makes it all right.
Certainly, certainly. Well, I really have, as you know, have appreciated your ministry and just everything that you've been able to do through God's grace and through the love that is in your heart for people. And so I just thank you for taking some time to share with your West Virginia Baptist Convention family some of the things that are going on, some of the realities that are going on around them, but also maybe some of the things that they could do to be a part of the solution. So if someone watches this and says, hey, I'd really like to talk to that Ortenzio fella, you wouldn't mind if they gave you a call or contacted you in some way. I'll just go ahead.
Yeah, and there is a state rep for every area of West Virginia, a Celebrate Recovery state rep that's job is as a volunteer to promote the ministry. So www.celebraterecovery.com, you can find a state rep and you can find a meeting. As soon as they all reopen, the list will be very much more accurate. But indeed, and I'm certainly happy to talk to anybody at any time about this ministry and about the problems that we have as a state and the solutions that are there through Jesus Christ. So.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to maybe when all this is over, we can go out to lunch and spend some time together.
Very good. Very good. Thank you
for being with us today, and thank you for joining us, folks, for this edition of Family Talks. See you next time.
Thank you.